All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Dorsey's Resource. The topic of this video is going to be, are secret SSN TDA accounts real? I'll let you be the judge. But first, before we get started, as usual, I like to give a disclaimer. This video is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. Please understand everyone's individual circumstance or situation may be different. It's up to every individual competent person to please do his or her homework and research regarding the matter being discussed. This information is not to be construed as legal advice. In the event you feel you need to seek a competent professional, it is encouraged that you do so at one's own leisure. Dorsey's Resource Channel is not liable or responsible for any misuse of this information. Everyone is responsible for their own affairs. With that being said, all rights are reserved. Now, let's get into the topic of this video again. This is like a rehash topic. It's been a while since I've done a video on this, but for those of you all who are interested in relation to redemption information and would like to know more about it, I decided to cover this topic again. And if I have enough time, maybe go over a few documentaries there. Still working on the Patreon. I can go into the details later, what's going on with that. So to get right into the topic, in my opinion, these accounts were real. Well, however, they obviously are being blocked. Some may wonder, a couple years ago when that movement broke out on YouTube back in like the summer of 2017, where there were several content creators and actually had gone viral on YouTube during that particular time period. I happened to catch it around maybe the middle of July 2017, and I discovered at the time, I was wondering why a lot of people were coming to my channel and my views on the video that I did on the black card, and it's a reason why I took those videos down. Some of you all already may know the reason why, in relation to that event that I attended some years ago, which actually provides credibility to show that I'm going over, I'm a reputable source. It's like I'm an insider who's decided to go public, and I've already explained that in the past, the reasons why. I won't maybe go into as in depth, maybe. So you guys also, this is Q&A if you have any questions or want to know why, but I do have some real answers. Now, there's different levels in this. Some people are more knowledgeable than others, and of course that event that I attended, that was a private clandestine operation or organization, as a friend of mine, good friend of mine, helped me uncover at the time, as I was trying to figure out, as we were learning this very elite information that is not privy to members in the general public. This is real, what I'm going over. And just to let you guys know, FYI, there are gatekeepers, and there's a troll out there that will claim in many instances that this information is not real. I want to tell you and validate, no, there's truth to this information. Now, there may be, of course, lesser informed people out there that do things that don't understand. But however, I have documents and sources to verify, to back up what I go over. And I actually contacted a private investigator who's actually works on one of the local news stations where I'm at. And I caught him when I happened to be with a friend of mine. I happened to see him. I was downtown in the city and happened to catch him. And I spoke with him very briefly. And he stated he would be willing to run a story if I sent him an email, by the way. And then I have some other people that I intended to contact because I felt I didn't like what was going on about in regards to that event. I was contemplating on going back, but they wanted me to sign another non-disclosure agreement, and I was contemplating over it, and I just decided to just hold off because they are still holding my paperwork too, by the way, which I do have some copies of in relation to some of the original documents, but they are still holding some of my important documents like my birth certificate, my social security card. And I've stated that that in order for me to keep my mouth shut about some of the things that I know, we need to be funded, and we should have been funded a long time ago, because that was the promise. The individual who lied, because there was another individual, there's a guy or someone, some people, several, but one in particular that is a current attendee of that particular event. that told me that I was making this personal. And I want to say this is not just personal. This is on behalf of other people. There were people who came to me privately who were concerned that were also part of that event. On a side note, the reason I'm going over this is to substantiate my credibility and how reputable I am. I do have sources, by the way, but these gatekeepers, I see you all in the chat, by the way. I'm going to acknowledge you all when I get a chance, just FYI. But these gatekeepers that are lying, saying that this information is fake, that this is not real, they say, hey, Dorsey, you're making this stuff up. No, I want to reiterate and emphasize I am very real. These accounts are real. Just because the reversals were happening doesn't mean that we were doing something criminal or illegal, by the way. This goes high up to an elite group of people, and that's all what I'll leave it at for the time being in a specific circle. But they are attempting, these gatekeepers, and some may not know, but they are attempting to sabotage our success. For those of us who knew about this, they're also using gatekeepers to threaten content creators from teaching or sharing this type of redemption information in an attempt to brainwash people and steer them away from researching the laws and learning the real truth about the legal system, the history about the banking system, etc. This is facts, what I'm going over. 100% guaranteed straight facts, because real facts matter. And I'm going over real credible, solid information. And I'm not going to say the name, but there's several gatekeepers out there. I don't call myself a guru, by the way. So be careful, too, of what you share, because some of these people may be paid agents or shills. In some instances, they could be a member of a globalist secret society. They could be an elite. And what they are doing is illegal. I've even seen on the local news how they stated some years ago that the NSA surveillance program that they were doing called, I believe, Operation Prism was actually illegal. I saw that on one of the news stations when they admitted that it was unconstitutional. But these people that are in the private sector that have access to this expensive equipment, these Stingray devices, and you can look what those are up, where it allows them to spy on people, go into like, what do you call those devices, you know, people use like Wi-Fi or whatever, and get information, because you've heard about the data breaches and stuff out there. And notice it's always attached to your social security number, which a certain content creator and others emphasize they're using behind the scenes, by the way. But I wanted to get back. I did have a list of notes I'm going to cover again as to the reason why these accounts were real. I'm going to go over, these are real credible reports from people. I spoke to a broker some time ago. Kudos to him, down south. I think he was in the state of Alabama or Mississippi. I can't remember for sure. But he gave me, I won't say his name to protect his identity, but he gave me confirmed information that there was a way to look up your account through Fidelity. And I had never met him before in person, but that's the same information that I received when I attended this private event that I paid for some years ago. So that information is matching up. You see how researchers, private investigators, detectives gather information, even though they might not have been at the scene when a crime is committed, but sometimes it leads to an arrest, or they have, like nowadays, DNA evidence, which is a newer technology to confirm, to tie in to someone in particular. That's similar to this type of information, that there are ways that we can detect, uncover, and how I've been able to detect this particular gatekeeper out there is doing a lot of lying, misinforming. It's one side, they are correct, but they're not telling you there's another side that's legitimate. You know, and I do have, I can back that up. But number one, this guy years ago looked up his deceased brother's account, and it was still collecting interest. By the way, you also have Treasury Direct as well. You want to become familiar with that site, just like the DTC, that stands for Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. There's a subsidiary of that too. And there's a relation, even on the Federal Reserve's website. I don't know if they still do, but at one time they listed each other's names, because I did a video a while ago on this particular gatekeeper tried to say that there was no relation between the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the DTC. That is not true. I've gone on their websites and they've actually listed each other's name. If you scroll through enough information on their website, just read to learn information. And this is not legal advice, by the way. I'm showing you guys how I do research. This is no different than a detective would do. You have some police officers that they don't do any work out in the field. All they do is they just do research and investigate. You have forensics people. One guy years ago, he was a traveling man, a Freemason. He told me what I am. He said, "You're actually a forensic researcher." I thought it was a unique way of putting it. You know, I say I just do research. Some people may consider it investigative research, but this helps you get to the bottom line, the meat and potatoes, when this particular gatekeeper constantly lies a lot, and I've caught them in many numerous lies, and they're not worth mentioning the name, by the way, but that's why I do screen capture videos to show evidence and proof. I looked up my BC some years back on Treasury Direct, and it showed the amount my bond was trading at, but actually more so recently, earlier, I believe it was this year when I was in touch with the broker, he showed me how to actually do it on Fidelity. Now, this information is kept very private, by the way, but there's also other sites too that your account, it's a form of a registered security. So even though there was an individual trying to claim it's not a bond, but a bond is a form of a securities instrument. And there's certain types of collegiate classes that teach this type of privy information. So you got to ask the question, if I'm lying or making this up, why isn't this gatekeeper explaining that to you? And I'm able to explain that I can tell you from a collegiate perspective, like if you studied at a college university, the information that's related to this redemption information, it's in a class called Business and the Law. There's also classes where there's people that study like finance majors or accounting, and they have to take, this is a requirement part of their major. Now, you know how you have source classes that are outside of your major, those are called electives. That are optional, but some of them are required. But if you're in a specific like major that deals with math, accounting, or finance, or even the legal system, you're required to take certain classes like business and law. And some of these subjects intersect with one another. They'll overlap, like economics. You know, you have things related to geometry, law, supply and demand, GDP, gross domestic product, which is listed on the site that shows you with the currency is not only what it's trading at, but with the inflation, it's the national debt clock actually has the GDP, gross domestic product, and other breakdowns like a chart on there, by the way. So just showing you guys credibility to substantiate the information that I'm going over. Number 3, okay, I mentioned that already. Once again, business and law, finance, accounting books. My friend's wife, by the way, I got this in my notes. She gave me an accounting book, and it was from her college class. She was taking classes at University of Michigan, Dearborn, and there's a section in the book where it talks about marketable and non-marketable securities that deals with people that go in that type of field. They go apply, they have to take a test for like securities license, similar people that have to take a test to become a CPA, a lower level of a certified public accountant is an LPA, licensed public accountant. Just like a paralegal is a lower form of a lawyer, and they have to get their license. It's issued through the county, by the way. Very similar. If you study, you know, I'm building you guys up too to connect the pieces. That's very important, to connect the dots. So number 4, a third-party check verification merchant looked up my social security number along with the routing number at the time I gave them for my account. And she said, I would have been able to record the call at the time. Unfortunately, I didn't have the app downloaded to the particular phone I had. This was back in 2017, and that check verification merchant was actually Telecheck. They looked up 2 of my accounts, and she confirmed, and I had never even met this person in person before, but I gave him my information, went over several times, and she confirmed 2 of these accounts were real, by the way. And there's a reason, I may not go into all the details why these reversals were happening or why these accounts are being blocked, and other people confirmed this with me. But a third-party check verification merchant, she looked up my SSN with the routing numbers I gave them for my account, and she could see in the database that I had an account there. And I want to say on the side note, another content creator that came out during the time, Willow Green Song, that was the name of her channel. I'm not sure if she's still around, but she was doing research into this information, as well as other content creators such as Harvey Dent, Mike O'Brien, and others who are out there. And Willow had a friend that worked at the bank. She told a story that had got access to one of her boss passwords while he went on break. She looked up her account information. She gave her social security number and looked up the Federal Reserve Bank, and she stated she was able to see it. She said she got scared or whatever because she did it while her boss was on break or something like that when he went on lunch, because she really didn't have, she was like maybe a tier staff up, but she was able to get access to the higher level information that generally higher level people within the bank can access. So Willow told that story, and Willow also told the story. Kudos to her, how she showed how her grandfather's social security number in one of her videos stated years ago. It stated account number on there. They used to put that on there. Now the newer model they came out with, they don't put that on there anymore. And I advise people look up, go online before they remove it, screen capture your web, your web screen, and to gather the evidence. So for future references, you can do a video just like myself to show proof. But years ago, look up old-fashioned social security numbers or type in old numbers or old types. You can change the words around. This is what I did, and it'll show. And some people that say it doesn't mean for identification purposes, what they're referring to, they mean photo identification to get like in bars, clubs, casinos, or places like that. So it's a distinction. It's still used for identification. However, it was not physically stating photo identification. But I had Chase Bank sometime earlier in the year, if not last year, a teller there confirmed with me personally they use it as a process of elimination to help confirm your identity if you don't have some of your other forms of photo ID. And that could even include concealed carry license, if you don't have your driver's license, or even your debit card, which doesn't have a photo on there. So this stuff that this gatekeeper was trying to say, that it's not used for identification. You see how I'm going in depth breaking this down, but they're not doing that. You got to ask the question why. Because when people have an agenda and they want to steer you in a certain direction, they want to brainwash you, they want you to be controlled and dumbed down, they don't go as in depth like I do. So just keep that in mind. So on a side note, I'm going to jump in the chat real quick. I may be limited for time, by the way, as you guys already know. So let me go to the chat section. I see it's filled up. So CJ says, love what you're doing, bro. Appreciate you, CJ. Thank you for joining. Chris Smith says, what do you mean by TDA accounts? The accounts with the Treasury have thousands of QSIPs. Many of these are a foreign ownership. Do you see a dilemma here? Yes. On a side note, that is kind of sort of true what you're saying. However, it's attached to your main BC, which some people state bond certificate other than birth certificate, that corporations are able to tap into as intermediaries. You also want to look up auto tris. If you know anything about accounting, it's about balancing the books. There's two sides. The front of the social security numbers, the Sestacue trust, the numbers on the back deals with the foreign situs trust. When you're referring to, you're still not going in depth when you mention foreign ownership. You got to mention about the public side too. The ones on the back refer to the foreign situs trust, which the International Monetary Fund, the banking elite are able to tap into when you study. If you know about the ruling class elite, the Bilderberg, the Davos group, best believe those people are connected to the Federal Reserve Bank, and there is a connection to the Treasury as well. It says because of their criminal activity, poor custodianship, they can't act lawfully too late. You said a mouthful there. I have to probably get back with you to expound upon. It says I did that through my Fidelity account. And I want to say, some people on here too come in and are really advanced, by the way, and there's this information can go in depth. There is definitely truth to what you're saying, Chris Smith, to go over once again. But I was referring to the account numbers of the route. There's routing numbers that are attached to your account number. Not only is your social security number an account number, it's also a form of a QSIP number. And QSIP, by the way, stands on Committee on Uniform Securities Identifying Procedures or Identifying the Principal or Identification Procedures. There's a variation, by the way, with the terminology that deals with QSIP. And there's a connection with the American Bankers Association, which is attached to the Federal Reserve. Hold on, guys. Be back. Okay, I'm back for the time being. Gotta listen out. Once again,
Robert Holmes, you copy?
These banking institutions, by the way, are able to tap into that QSIP that I went over. By the way, I may have mentioned this briefly earlier. The QSIP numbers are assigned bonds once they're created. Our BC, by the way, this birth certificate, some say bond certificate, is pledged as collateral. So even though this gatekeeper out there was saying that it's not a bond, it is a form of a securities instrument, and there is a relationship when you study about registered securities, which people, if you talk to financial brokers, people who go to school to get their brokerage license, and there's different levels, like you have Series 63, Series 7 that deals with the stock market. I have a friend, personal friend, he actually had his Series 7 years ago license, and he was like where you're able to trade stocks, and he has Series 63 where he was a loan officer, worked certified like for a mortgage company, stuff like that, by the way, which there's a relation to this information. This is a lot of information to go over. So intermediaries are banking institutions and corporations, and they are allowed to tap into our accounts. So there was information that came out where someone, Harvey Dent was one of them, where they mentioned, for example, just in reference to his channel, from some sources that he had, that people were reporting success using nonprofit organizations somehow to tap into their account. Now, I didn't get access to that information. If anybody out there wants to share that with me or has access to that, I would like to know how that works. And you can reach me at Dorsey's Resource 2017 at gmail.com. That's Dorsey's Resource 2017 at gmail.com for serious inquiries, because I don't know everything myself, but that's how this information, these banking institutions and major corporations are allowed, because they sell your debt. Like when you don't pay a merchant and a third-party debt collector contacts you, which you didn't sign a contract with, they're selling your debt. Then the bank turns around and sells it to another bank, and it gets pledged as collateral. It goes to the national debt, by the way. And there's other things I could touch on, who they pledged as collateral to the debt, the deficit, because you back the currency. I have an actual document that was a congressional session by Congress some years ago where they mentioned the American people back the currency. That is in the document. Some of you out there actually have that. So they are authorized to use auto trist. That's why I said to Chris Smith earlier in relation to your comment, you got to talk about the auto trist as well. By the way, that's related to that. QSIP. Styles Davis says, yeah, Stingray is very real. Thank you for confirming. Those are the devices that's used to spy on cell phones, and I hear they can range from anywhere from $2,000 to $200,000. By the way, from what I've heard, you can look up information on what Stingrays are. Money Boy in the building. What's up, family? Appreciate you, Money Boy. Chris Smith says, Money Boy in the building. RMW says, your due diligence is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Appreciate you, RMW. Money Boy Film says, what's up, Chris? By now, you should know the accounts are very real. Yes, sir. Enjoy every day, family. Money Boy again. I remember Willow. Thank you for confirming. Mary Saunders says, hello, sir. Greetings to you, Mary. Thank you for joining. Supreme L Bay in the house says, hey, Dorsey, peace and love. Peace to you. Peace to the God. Supreme Rod D says, no, step by step to get to them. Yeah, there actually is, in a way, when I had contemplated on going back in relation to your comment, Rod D, as far as the step-by-step process, they wanted me, or the individual stated that they wouldn't trust me unless I signed an NDA. This is like a second form of an NDA, and they still haven't paid us yet. And when he resurfaced last year around the same time of the year, they promised that we were going to be funded by January of this year, which still hasn't happened yet. So it's like, and then I heard people are going through the same thing we went through back in 2009, where they're being promised, and oh boy, it's just so much information. That's why if I'm able to start Patreon, it's a lot I want to share with you guys, and I'll be able to go more in depth. But it'll be a win-win situation based on a tier system I'm able to have if I can get donations, because the purpose of it is people would be paying me for my intellectual, or donating for my intellectual property, which is my unique perspective on the way that I break things down, the credibility that I go over and things. You will get, that's what it will go towards, and it will be beneficial. It will be a win-win situation for both of us, because, YouTube has demonetized a lot of videos. It would also keep down on the trolls, because it would make sure that a lot of trolls that follow me, and gatekeepers and minions that don't have a good heart, that are mean-spirited people who are evil, who don't want you to know the legitimate side of this information, they would have to donate if they follow me on Patreon to get the information I cover, to try to sabotage it or whatever, and that would be more work they would have to go through. You see what I mean? Plus, I look at it as though people pay to go to movie theaters, concerts, baseball, sports games, venues. This is a form of paying for your freedom. And if we can network effectively, we can help each other out, because I meet some talented people, but unfortunately it's difficult to bring some people together that have certain skill sets, because there's different disciplines, ideological differences, and there's people that are just in this for themselves, by the way. They're not trying to help. So, Rod D, I feel your concern. There is a step-by-step procedure. What I want to go over in relation to your comment is that they don't want to teach me the rest of the information, that the elites actually have the silver bullet. When those out there, April or June has mentioned this, it's not a one-size-fits-all formula. I was told years ago, this information is not a silver bullet. By the way, it's like unconventional, but the elites that are privy to this information, exclusive group of people, best believe, are on the inside. I believe, in my opinion, a small group, say in comparison to the main U.S. population, even if it's several thousand to 100,000, that's still a percentage of the population. They're privy to this information, but they're selective about who they're sharing it with. But I feel they were the ones that broke the contract, because they promised us that we were going to get funded. So they lied continuously, broke the oath. And I hear this other individual that decided to go back, that's like a mouthpiece that tries to convince me, and was saying that I'm taking it personal. In my defense, I'm still cool with this individual, but I'm gonna say in my defense, this is not personal. I've shared this. This is on behalf of other people, but I state to this individual that's blatantly wrong. On the public side, individuals would have been locked up a long time ago for constantly lying. That's a form of fraud. When we spent the money to the donations to learn this information, they were supposed to deliver on their promise. And he says, well, he's just, this particular individual, I'm not saying the name of, he said is a mouthpiece or a front for some other people behind the scenes, that he decided to come out and share this information. But I believe he is very well connected, because these people already have access to their account. They're not suffering like we are. I'm still punching the clock, guys. So I'm not an agent. I want to assure you, some people tried to accuse me of being an agent or government shield. And what I first say, you first got to look at people who are part of fraternities and sororities. Now, I'm not saying that makes everyone that's part of a fraternity or sorority a shield agent, but you got to look at them first. And you got to look at the fact I'm still punching the clock. And I'm one of the few people that's willing to share this information as a courtesy, by the way. And I've already helped groups of people. That's why some of you all have met through the Discord app. When I was invited a couple years ago, you guys know I'm real. I'm not hiding behind a fake account like the one gatekeeper troll. I'm showing my real face. I have mentioned in previous videos what my real name is. By the way, my government name, slave name, by the way, if you want to get more specific. So this shows credibility versus someone who's hiding behind a fake account, by the way. But I'm not going to harp on that, but you guys get the drift. So hopefully, Rod D, there are people that are working on a step-by-step procedure, but unfortunately, these elite members, that are trying to make this exclusive, they're doing this on purpose. Unfortunately, many of them are mean-spirited, and they thrive off of people suffering. By the way, sadly, we have to fight, do the best that we can to study, to learn this information. It is encrypted and coded within the laws and other things. That's why when you have tight-knit groups of people that can come together and put their ideological differences to the side, we could accomplish some powerful things, because I've met individuals with great skill sets that have better clerical skills than myself. And that's the area that I'm weak in. But unfortunately, when you're doing this type of information, you need clerical skills to be able to print up documents and stuff like that, by the way. So get back to the chat before I go back into the reasons why these accounts were real. Kenya Rollison says, where do I start to learn more? Already tried Money Boy and he never responded. I don't have the answer for that right now, Kenya, but I just say start researching. I'll just throw some names out there, some popular YouTube channels, one in particular, Usavail. What I did is do a lot of reading for free information that is still available. I did a lot of reading first, many years ago, by the way, which is not privy, because this information is kept secret and heavily guarded, by the way. There was private classes in the city that I'm in. Now, it was like underground, so if those meetings are still around, I'm not even sure, because the people that I was associated with ended up having differences, breaking apart. And so that's how I am kind of like an insider, know about this information. And I was invited to that event that I referred to by my cousin, who's in a different state, who's actually down south from where I'm at, by the way. So that's how I learned about that information. So, the best thing I can say is study the basic information. A lot of people ask me, what's the first step? The first step, I'm going to say, I'm going to give you a secret, and I can go more in depth if I'm able to start a Patreon account, is cancel, get rid of that voter registration. That's a contract, and don't be an organ donor. When I first woke up, and one of the first meetings that I went to, the lady there, she stated she was a former Detroit police officer, and she said at the time that they taught her at one time how to deal with sovereign citizens. I guess they had stopped teaching the protocol, the classes that they would coach their officers on to go over protocol. And she told us at the time, she said the first thing you want to do is get rid of your voter registration, which I did. I went to the Department of Elections. I canceled it. It's really terminated, but we say cancel because on the public side, they don't understand certain words have a legal meaning. Like if you go to school to become a paralegal or a lawyer, you'll learn about this. But the rest of the people in the general population are not privy to is that certain terminologies, words we use, has a totally separate meaning legally. Understand there's a distinction legally. And all of these are contracts. We enter into many contracts all the time, by the way. So she said that's the first thing we need to do. And she also mentioned don't be an organ donor. And I actually saw evidence firsthand how it's tied to the DMV. It's funny, they can register you, but they can't cancel it. You have to specifically find your local Department of Elections to have it canceled, by the way. Turn this radio down. So hopefully I brought clarification for you. By the way, Kenya, hopefully that'll help you out. Chris Smith, the root account is the BC, but each of these numbers have thousands of sub accounts. The CAFR is clear on what they do lawfully. The CFR is clear on what they are to do lawfully. They're doing it. I'm not sure if you're talking about. Chris Smith? Are you referring to the CAFR funds or Council on Foreign Relations when you say the CFR is clear on what they do lawfully? I understand that, yes, the BC is definitely the main account. So it appears you're advanced, by the way. So, this is, I want to go over like basic information. And by the way, guys, if I am able to start the Patreon, I'm going to start off with the basic stuff, but I'm going to go more in depth because a lot of people think they have the basics down and they really don't have the basic information down. It's important to lay the foundation. Just like in martial arts, if you're training in certain styles, like say Wing Chun, your root, the stronger you are grounded, and condition. The reason you do your calisthenics is to condition your body to be able to take blows, to be able to take hits. You're making the muscles and tendons stronger and your ligaments and things when you condition yourselves, even when you rehabilitate. This information is similar. When you study, it's important to get the basics down, the foundation. And that's why I cover. Now, there is a certain level I'm at. There's people more advanced than me. That's why I recommended. I brought up Yusuf L's channel to start off with for Kenya that had the question earlier, by the way. So let me scroll back. I see Supreme says everything is prepaid. Anytime you give your SSN number, it's already paid. Yes, sir. When you see the doctor pay, bill, get a house, etc., anytime you give that SSN, you're getting charged, and they tap into those accounts. Yes, that is correct. They do. I'm trying to see if I can expound on that. There's examples, by the way, some of you are already familiar with. That's why I went over the terminology, deal with the straw man, what the straw man means in the court system. It's the in lingus, and the reason it's distinctly put in all capital letters. And the CAFR funds, by the way, that deals with the county behind the scenes that has records of the citizens. The court systems deals with the CRIS accounts, court registry input system, which is tied in with the Federal Reserve. So when they say they're charging you, they're charging your bond, your QSIP, which is attached to your main BC, by the way. So when people go to prison or whatever, I won't go into all the details and stuff, they're tapping into that account. So they still have a way, even after you die, they create a death certificate, by the way. Money Boy, yes, Chris Smith says, indeed, Supreme in there, says, peace to the guys, at Chris Smith. Chris Smith says, looks like we've contributed to the dire need for the U.S. to RV. Supreme says, private side solutions. Yes, they have a good site. Yes, well, believe that's Yusuf, by the way. But I think there was another site that used that name, Private Side Solutions, that dealt with this redemption information. I see this info as Armor first, then the Infinity Gauntlet. The contract redress is absolutely crucial. We know the problem, so do we have a solution? Kenya says, Chris Smith says, was my slave name. He is now the indentured servant of Chris Smith. Yes, that is correct. You're a legal person. Also in lingus. By the way, in Black's Law Dictionary 6th edition, look up the Dred Scott case, which I am familiar with. Once again, Black's Law 6th edition. Many of these government names, that's the reason why there is a correlation to some of this indigenous stuff. So even though I don't knock, the Moors help wake me up. Even though I'm not officially a part of the Moorish National or the Moorish Science Temple, because I noticed this gatekeeper is going after these particular groups or whatever. And I want to say on a side note, I don't have any affiliation with them. I'm an independent researcher, independent journalist, but I don't knock their information. I'll say there is truth to what they're saying. And some people say everyone doesn't have all the pieces connected. But I will say at certain levels, some people don't have access to all the information. But what I'm privy to, what I'm sharing from the skill set that I have, there's an event that I attended some years ago with some of you all who know me personally. I have inside information. I have audios, documentation to support and substantiate that. And I've also spoken with private investigators. And obviously I work in the field of law enforcement. I had to go through a background check. But I'm a fair person. Will give you real answers and bust these myths that are going on out there. Some of these rumors that this stuff isn't real, that this is a conspiracy theory, that all this stuff is fake. No, there is credibility. There's a legitimate side of this SC information for the SCs out there. By the way, I don't use that name, by the way, but I'm just saying in reference to this particular gatekeeper, this minion who constantly lies and has made up a lot of stuff. But I've shown in my previous screen capture videos, they tried to say the United States was not a federal corporation. Yes, it is, pursuant to, in reference to, Title 28, Section 3002 of the United States Codes, subsection 15, subsection C. It states that. You can look it up online, and it stated unequivocally. When you can do a Yahoo or Google search. There is credible information on the online search engines, and I recommend document these because these individuals, these gatekeepers out here, they're attempting to sabotage your success because they don't want you waking up. They want to attempt to brainwash people and steer them away from learning this information. So you got to keep that in mind too. By the way, that's why they're gonna constantly make up lies and live in these echo chambers. But you know, you're gonna get real facts over here, by the way. So let me go back to the chat, see if there's any more. Rod D says, appreciate you, Dorsey. Kenya says, thank you. I live in your city and I believe the info is hidden in plain sight. Appreciate you. Kudos. So you're in the same city. Interesting. Maybe I like the network. You know, there is a study group, another group I'm affiliated with that has classes at the Southfield Library. I'm not officially a member, but I do know the individuals, kind of like one of the heads or whatever. And that's where I go every now and then to get updated or stay in the loop of, as far as what's going on. So there's people who legitimately and that study this information, by the way, and they're connected to other credible people as well, despite the rumors that you hear that the people that study this information are radical or domestic, you know what. No, that's not true. There's a legitimate side to this information. And I also am in the midst, I did mention already, I contacted a private investigator from one of the news channels. I was downtown with a friend of mine. I was just hanging out with him, and I happened to see this private investigator in the downtown metro area. And I came up to him and I went over some things. I was a little nervous, so fumbly, but I did, I guess, mention to him I had a YouTube channel. He said, send me the link, email me the YouTube channel that you have. And he said, I'll do a story on it. And it's also in relation to something else. I don't want to kind of give a hint because there's minions out there who, you know, try to do things to stop it. But he stated that he was willing to do a story on the information I have to share, because I think I probably won't go into all that right now because there's too many. I don't want to risk. There's bad people out here that don't have good intentions, and I want to implement that first before I fully speak on it. So I need to contact him. Says Chris Smith says, I'm in CA where the license is indeed a contract. Like most states, I surrendered that contract and redress it appropriately. Kenya says, yes, you did. Thank you. RMW says, it is necessary to establish a UCC1. Yes, that is part of the process. However, nowadays we've learned it's not completely necessary. By the way, there are different processes, by the way, in this information. And some states started because of all the misinformation and spookism and people working in the public who just simply, you can't fault them, don't know or never heard this information. They get spooked or scared because they think there's letters that get sent out. So they actually are illegally blocking people from accessing their freedom and trying to give people a hard time. So sometimes you have to contract maybe with a paralegal or an attorney, but do limited power of attorney. Don't give them full power of attorney, because when you hire a lawyer or paralegal, you're declared incompetent. So the way you would work around that, maybe do a limited power of attorney or just hire them to draw up the paperwork for you so they can properly submit it, or look up the laws in your state to find out what format the county accepts the type of paperwork filing, because it's hidden in the codes. And the gatekeepers that always love to block you when you want to submit paperwork and say here, when it's their job as a public servant to not pass delegation of authority over your legal affairs, but to file the paperwork, because they're a public servant and they refuse to. Now they're lawyering. They're practicing a law without a license, which they don't have delegation of authority to do, by the way, but it's their job. But the excuse they try to say, well, we don't give legal advice. You have to contact. So to work around that, what they're not telling you, by the way, is it's coded in the state laws, not just in Michigan. There's a certain format that you have to file the paperwork if it's, say, so many margins from the top or whatever. And then they have these nuances. They use these different techniques to block people from accessing their freedom. This is the evil, wicked stuff they do that this particular gatekeeper isn't addressing. When she wants you to be in the statutory side of the system that she promises will take care of you and just cuddle you and just, and claims it's beneficial for you overall versus learning this type of information. That other side of the statutory system has been shown to harm people, where you have these major corporations that are having these data breaches. that are accessing people's social security numbers. And then on top of that, they're accessing your private QSIP account and you're not getting anything back. Now, one of the presidential candidates I heard is running for president recently. And by no means, I'm not a registered voter. I'm just referencing him. I think his name was Y.A. Yang, but I read recently that, and I agree with this, he feels that a lot of people's data is being used behind the scenes and American citizens should get a cut of that money. By the way, I would have kept my mouth shut because they didn't give us a cut when I attended that private operation. He should have at least given us something. If it's 100,000, you know, because these people, what I would argue, they've been allowed to access their accounts. They're eating good. They're sleeping good at night. Their children are well taken care of. And the people who humbly paid the money, the donations to learn this information, why are you torturing and punishing us and not letting us properly access our accounts? When I heard you guys mention that you guys can give access to diplomatic immunity or change people's statuses just like that. And I know it may be a certain form with General Services Administration that does that paperwork. Wink, wink. I'm kind of giving you guys some powerful hints. But see how cruel and wicked they are? You know, and you're doing this. This is some mean, cruel stuff. But I'm just kind of, I know I may have said a mouthful right there, but I'm kind of giving you guys some hints as far as showing you how cruel they are. But this gatekeeper always makes it out that it's the SCs that are lurking around the corner waiting to come get you. When it's the system itself is very corrupt from a lot of gatekeepers, not just, you know, bad, corrupt public officials, or as they try to put the blame on police officers. But remember, who decides how long people get prison sentences in court? Judges, juries. It's all through the court system. So there's a lot of corruption there that's not being talked about, and abuse of power, like with guardianship, by the way. Wink, wink, wink. Guardianship? I'm not going to go there. But you guys, you get the drift of what I'm talking about. So I'm going over some heavy stuff. So you says, Chris Smith, once again, UCC contract redress, ecclesiastical depot is a must. RMW says, thank you, Chris. Ed Tunador says, have you done it, sir? Have you removed your straw man? Yes, some years ago, by the way, if that's in reference to myself, I have filed one. I don't really have the time to touch on that, to go over. I'm on a time restraint. By the way, maybe in a future video, if you guys can remind me, I can touch on that. But it's not required, by the way. There is another way to actually take over control of your legal person, your estate, the in lingus in the court system. Because certain courts won't recognize straw man. And they have what's called plausible deniability, which they can act like they don't know what you're talking about. It's like legally, it gives lawyers and judges a scapegoat to act like they don't know what you're talking about. Plausible deniability. You can look it up, by the way. There's different tactics they use within the courts. I've actually talked to people that have battled, debated, defended themselves in court, by the way, that had firsthand stories. Ed Tunador says, okay, I skipped that part. Sorry about that. Chris Smith says, they do it as faithful custodians is how they defend themselves. That's funny. It says, Ed Tunador says, does the economic reset affect our ability to do this? That's a good question. That's a mouthful. I may have to come back to that. If guys, in case I'm not able to get back, because I'm going to try to get back on the subject. I see a lot of you guys are joining the chat tonight. Normally, I don't get a lot of people. Maybe it's the holiday. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. If you do celebrate, by the way, happy Thanksgiving, you know, to you, your loved ones, family members, everyone, happy holidays. So that does, once again, does the economic reset affect our ability to do this? I think in a way it's being manipulated and stalled, I will say, in my opinion, to keep from accessing the funds. That is a whole nother topic within itself, how they use the banking system. Debt is their weapon for enslavement. Someone mentioned Jordan Maxwell said this is real corp since late. Yes, Jordan Maxwell has excellent information. I've copied notes from Jordan Maxwell, by the way. He was a guest on Alex Jones' show, by the way. He went over this information some time ago before Alex Jones was removed off of YouTube. Jordan Maxwell did a very excellent video. I already knew who he was, but by the way, he's an excellent historian who's been around from the old school. who's still out there. Chris Smith says the indigenous stuff is the biggest missing link. The custodians of the account for the indigenous people on claim explains the trust they had to pay info and pull/borrow against. And I want to say, for those that don't believe the indigenous stuff to be correct, I have a source. I'm connected to a Rasta brother down in Florida. He gave me the permission. He said that I could call him a Rasta brother, refer to him as a Rasta. And he stated to me he was in touch with some people. There is actual tribal organizations that have a partnership with the State Department. So there is a legitimate side to this information. There's some things I don't know. I won't go as in depth, but there is a connection. There is a legitimate side, despite there's you do have to watch out for a con artist. I'll give you a warning. I do give a disclaimer. This is not legal advice, but just referencing there's people who will come out selling this type of information. You want to check their background, check their credibility, see how legitimate they are. I'm not saying just donate or give your money to anybody, but decide, evaluate, the type of people who do go over this information or want, to charge you, or if you're part of, some of these different groups that have been labeled as, those terms out there, by the way. Supreme says Moorish Americans are not a club membership. It's a nationality and birthright to tie you back to the land and human family, Islam. Yes, you are correct. Only thing with that, too, is I didn't want to go off track. What Supreme says, that's a lot to expound upon, because there's documents at the Library of Congress, National Archives, like that has records of the treaties and stuff, is that there were groups that were conquered where the U.S. corporation has taken over. They have the power. Remember, they created canon law years ago, without going into all the history, by the way. And there's certain indigenous groups that they don't want to assimilate. But I believe you can assimilate. And like I did mention, there's legitimate tribal organizations. There's a way to obtain proper diplomatic status and things, but there's an appropriate way to go about doing that. And you have to go through the right channels, the right avenues. Now, I don't have all the information on that, but I'm in touch with a lot of people, and I have a skill set where I can study a lot of information and deconstruct it and interpret. And I'm kind of interpreting some things you're sharing, because it may be too esoteric for some people who learn this information. There's different processes applied to different people for different circumstances as well. But to back that up, yes, the Black's Law Dictionary 6th edition refers to the Dred Scott case. It was never overturned. And there was a website I have proof of. It stated years ago where melanated people, Africans in this country, because they captured everybody through the under contract through the 14th Amendment. This applies to Caucasian and black people, because remember, you guys already know, some of you, those are just terms. Black and white actually dealt with the status. By the way, it didn't mean deal with skin color or race. Like, race too is what race are you in? On your mark, get set, go. It deals with the status. What status are you on? Caste system, class. You have different classes, just like you have different processes. So, yes, Supreme, you are correct in what you're saying. And they mentioned in a Martin Lawrence movie some years ago, The Black Knight or something like that. If you look up that movie, the guy called him a Moor in that movie, and there was another one as well. Okay, well, hold on, guys. All right, guys, thank you for bearing with me. I didn't know I was going to go this long. I'm almost hit an hour. But as you guys already know, I'm on the graveyard shift. Ironically, interestingly, my supervisor comes on site when I decide to shoot a video. Always happens like that when I'm going over powerful information. The topic of this video was, are secret SSN TDA accounts real? And then I said, I'll let you be the judge. We've covered a lot of information. I'm sorry I got to cut things short. I am at what I call the slavery plantation, by the way. And these accounts are real. By the way, there's a lot of information. Like I went over telecheck earlier. They confirmed the check verification service. I had her look those routing numbers up that people got reversals on a couple years ago. And she confirmed that yes, indeed, and I never even met this person, that account did exist. And she mentioned, went into detail what it was used for like the difference between electronic funds transfer or what type of account you would write a check off of, by the way. So contrary to the popular belief, and also that thing with PayPal, I hear major pressure was put on PayPal by the FBI and the Federal Reserve, allegedly. I do have evidence of a video from a guy whose YouTube channel was completely removed, and he showed how he was accessing his exemption account off of PayPal. So this is more credibility. I had mentioned that before previously. There's more evidence, so maybe I can do a continuation of part 2 on my notes. There was a lot of other stuff to cover. I want to thank you guys for joining me once again. You can follow me at Dorsey's Resource. I'm on Twitter at Dorsey's Resource. I'm on Facebook at Dorsey's Resource. Of course, obviously on YouTube. I'm also on minds.com. Just look up Dorsey's Resource. I'm your host, John Dorsey, and until next time, I appreciate you guys for joining me. And I did see we had somebody sent looks like a super chat, by the way. So let me see if they sent in a message. I'm sorry. Oh, Chris Smith, appreciate you for the super chat. By the way, just want to acknowledge you before I shut it down. By the way, appreciate that. Thank you guys for allowing me to be your host. Until next time, take care.